Hi, my name is IWillDominate from Team Liquid, and this is my basic champion guide to Volibear. For Volibear's jungle clear, I believe that he does it fairly well now that they buffed the W. If you don't know about the buff, every time you use your W on a monster in the jungle, the cooldown's halved, so you can use it once at the start of the camp and then once at the end of the camp for execute damage. As far as ganking goes, I think Volibear's legitimately one of the top ganking junglers in the game right now. He just has so much CC early game, and he has movement speed, gap closer, and with Chilling Smite you can pretty much get on everyone, so I'd say his ganking is a 10. I'd say it's top tier. And for solo queue, overall I think he's an 8. I think he brings a lot of early game pressure, which is really important in solo queue since a lot of the games are decided early and there's a lot of tilting and raging in solo queue if you get super far ahead, so being able to put a lot of pressure on the map early is super good. He also is fairly tanky because of his passive, and he does a lot of damage if the team isn't coordinated at peeling you. When starting off your jungle path on Volibear, I like to start Gromp, which allows your bot lane to get double gold if you're on blue side, and it also sets up a really good path for you, which is level 1 you do Gromp with help of your top laner. Level 2 you do blue buff, and you don't use any pots. What you use to sustain yourself is use your passive on the first couple camps. So you let yourself tick down to like 1 or 2 bars, and then your passive will help you sustain a little bit, and it'll normally be back up by the time you need it, like in a gank situation. So I start Gromp, then do blue buff, then my third camp will be red buff, and I'll smite that and have a decent amount of health, and I'll just use like 1 pot normally, and I'll be topped off at full health, and then I'll be able to gank either mid or bot with a full health Volibear gank, which I think is super strong, and you can normally get a kill in either lane. When playing Volibear on purple side, I like to start Gromp with help of my bot lane, get blue second, and pop my passive. Make sure I don't use any health pots on the early part of my clear, since it has a 2-minute cooldown and it'll normally come back up in a reasonable amount of time. The third camp I'll do is red buff, and I'll smite that and get more health. So I'll be normally full health with 1 extra pot, and from there I'll either gank top or mid depending on which lane is pushed or which lane I have better CC in. When ganking on Volibear, it's fairly straightforward. You normally just want to run up to them with your Q, and then once when you're about to get in range to flip them, you E to slow them down and make sure you can get your Q off, and then you just flip them and auto them twice, which will bring up your W, and you normally just try to get off your W before they are able to get away from you. Normally when you're running at people with Volibear, they'll be pretty quick to flash, and if they do flash, then you can flash right after them, flip them, and then they'll have no way to get out of the gank. So the Volibear's biggest strength is ganking, and the ganks are pretty easy to accomplish, so you just have to be ready to look for ganks that you can do, and remember that since you do have a flip, you are able to go for some of the ganks that are close to their turret. When teamfighting with Volibear, you want to start off the fight by using your Righteous Glory, or if you don't have one, just queuing at the team. If they have a high priority target, like a carry without flash, you can flash flip them into your team and you'll probably end up killing them. If you get peeled at any point, you should just turn on your ultimate and auto the closest thing to you. It hits 4 targets, which is normally enough to hit most of their team in a team fight. So it's really important to just use your passive to tank. Don't be afraid when you go low, especially if you don't have Ignite on you. And then auto as many times as possible to just proc your lightning through as many people as you can. As far as counter jungling, Volibear doesn't really have any tools to make him an excellent counter jungle, but he is really good in 1v1 fights. So if you do end up in a skirmish with the other jungler, if you have your passive up, you'll almost win all of them if you're just able to get into range. Unless you're being kited, Volibear is super strong just head to head, so it just really depends on the type of skirmish. But if you do get into a 1v1 or 2v2 with your passive up and they don't have Ignite, you should be able to come out on top every time. As for champions that synergize really well with Volibear, pretty much all laners that have any type of CC will synergize well. Like for example, mid would be LeBlanc, top would be Aurelia. Anything that can lock up an opponent and help you with your gank will be really good, because if Volibear is able to get up to someone for free, they're almost 100% dead. The only problem he has is with being kited, so you just love any laners that bring CC, like Alistar for example is support, Thresh support, Aurelia Rise top, Maokai top, Ari mid, LeBlanc mid, pretty much anything that can either follow up really well or start off the gank with CC really well. The biggest tip that I could give you guys on Volibear is to realize that even if you get peeled out of a fight, you can use your ultimate to proc your lightning on champions that are far away from you. So if you, for example, are fighting around mid lane, and you go for a gank and you get peeled. Look for the closest thing possible to hit. If it's a minion, it will work too, and just hit the minion and try to proc your lightning onto them. There's a little bit of RNG when it comes to which targets get hit, but in general, it's better to just do that than chase after them and not be able to do any damage. On Volibear, I normally go physical damage marks, armor per level yellows, CDR blues, and attack speed quintessences. This is just a standard bruiser page, and the reason I run per level on armor is because I do want to pop my passive early, and I'd rather just have scaling armor so you don't really have clearing problems and you sustain yourself pretty well in the jungle. The CDR glyphs are just because Volibear is a cooldown based champion. He doesn't do much with his auto attacks. He's mainly based off being able to have your abilities up, so it just helps you have more abilities up more often. As for masteries on Volibear, I like to go 21 offense and 9 defense. The way I do this is by going 1 point double-edged sword, 2 points fury, 2 points sorcery, butcher, brute force, feast, martial mastery, spell weaving, blade weaving, executioner, dangerous game, devastating strikes, and havoc. And then for my 9 defense, I do 2 points block, 2 points tough skin, 3 points veteran scars, 1 point unyielding, and 1 point juggernaut. The reason for this setup is just to get the 10% CDR flat just from your runes and masteries, and also just have a lot of damage in the early game so you can kill people on your ganks. You're mainly trying to gank a lot and trying to get as many kills as possible. As for skills on Volibear, I like to start W level 1, get E level 2, because the fear is really good at reducing damage on the jungle monsters. And then I get Q level 3 to try to gank, and I max out W first, and then E second. The reason for this is W is your best clearing tool in terms of single target clearing, which is the Gromp and the Golem blue buff and red buff, just because you can use it twice on a gank now, and it has reduced damage. It also does the most damage to champions since you stack health and it's an execute. And E second is just better for the slow. It scales a lot better than the Q, for example, and it's just the second best ability he has to level. For item build on Volibear, you have a lot of options. You will be going Cinder Hulk, but it depends on how the game's going. You can go Chilling Smite if you're ganking a lot, you can go Rangers if you're farming a lot, or you can get Skirmishers if you're afraid of getting into like a 2v2 with the other jungler. So you have the options on which Smite you choose, but I normally go Chilling Smite, complete Cinder Hulk, and then Righteous Glory is a really good pickup. It just helps you close the gap in the later game when people have more kiting. And then you have the options of going any of the tank items that you need at that point. I personally like Frozen Heart a lot, just in general on tanks, just because it gives you a decent amount of CDR. If you have 10% CDR from your runes and masteries, then you get another 20 from Frozen Heart. If you pick up a Kindle Gem at any point, you'll be maxed out, and you'll just have your abilities up really quickly. And then you have the option of going Locket if your team needs a Locket, or Thornmail if your team needs a hard tank. It really just depends on what your team needs, but I think that Volibear is just tank later on and an early ganking jungler in the early game. Thanks for watching my champion guide to Volibear. Make sure to check out the rest of my videos here at lawclass.com.